Welcome back to The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Faria. Joining me now, two female leaders out of Guyana, Abigail Lonke Watson of MBW Consultants, and she's the Chief Executive Officer of MBW Incorporated, and Anita Ramprasad, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Prestige Management Consultant. Now, these two ladies are leading for the third year in a row the Local Content Summit in Guyana. We all reported on the local content legislation which the government of Guyana had passed, which ensures that all the business that is done, all foreign business that is done, has a local content. Local Guyanese have the opportunity, local organizations, businesses, people have the opportunity to also capitalize on the opportunities that are available. That is sort of the cusp of the local content legislation. And they have been hosting the summit this year. It's the third year. And they're joining me now on The Narrative to talk about the Local Content Summit, which takes place on April 8th at the Marriott in Guyana. Ladies, welcome to the program.
Hello, good day. Hi.
Good to have you on. And
Here.
let's start with Miss Ramprasad, I suppose. Because I want to get a feel of what inspired you, and you're co-founders of it, both Abigail and Anita. What inspired you to launch the Local Content Summit? And in these 3 years, how has it evolved?
I'll let Abigail handle this question. It was her brainchild. She brought me along, so I think it's more fitting for her.
Thank you, Anita. So the Local Content Summit was started in 2022. It was a vision of mine and my company to be able to give local companies the opportunity to get the relevant information they need and the relevant support that they needed to be able to flourish and to grow within the energy sector here in Guyana. We have several conferences that were taking place in Guyana, but we found that the local participation, after much review, was lacking. Locals didn't understand the requirements of participating in the sector, where the information was at, and how they can get the support. And so along the way of planning, I reached out to Anita, who is a whiz at the local content legislation and policies and putting all that together. And I think both of us coming together created the perfect partnership in establishing the Local Content Summit and growing it over the last 3 years.
And at this point, it's the third year. Your theme this year is collaborate, invest, build. Let's shape Guyana together. How does this theme align with the current needs of the local business community?
All right, I'll take that question. So prior to us finalizing the program for this year, in the media, there had been, I would say, a slew of signed joint venture agreements, which speaks to that whole statement of collaborate, invest, and build. And so we wanted to make sure that the key takeaway from the summit, that people understood that to build, you first need to collaborate. You know, there's an old saying that say, if you want to go far, go alone. If you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. And I believe that that's a true testimony to the business that is booming in Guyana. The powerhouses are coming together to build something larger than themselves. And we felt that the essence of the summit should be one that fosters collaboration, promotes partnerships, joint ventures, consortia. And we wanted to ensure that people understood that this was the way to shape the future of the Guyana that we want to have.
And what are the new elements this year or improvements can attendees expect at the summit compared to previous years as you've grown? Anything new that you're introducing and expanding on?
Yes. This year, we are giving them more tools on issues that we know that they are having. So, for example, just to pick up off of the comment I just made on collaborations and partnerships, a lot of companies don't understand how to identify strategic partnerships. They don't know how to negotiate it, how to navigate around. Example, if you're working with a partner from a different country, they don't understand how to navigate around dual legislations. They don't have an appreciation for the time, the process, what is required of them. And so, to give them that sort of insight into how they can best negotiate, navigate, and in the end land a successful venture was lacking in the previous years. So we have like a teaching workshop from people who have done it before and done it well, so that the audience will get to ask questions and clarify any areas that they may have gaps in. The second thing that I know that the public really is dying to hear about is what updates there will be to the first schedule. Now, the first schedule in the local content legislation is pretty much the guide for anyone who wants to operate in the oil and gas sector to know at what level they will need to collaborate with a local company. And this schedule has been in place since the inception of the legislation. And since then, the industry has grown. So I believe that participants will be curious to hear what are the upcoming amendments to this schedule. And therefore, it will create that space for companies to scale and plan ahead for future development. The other thing that we have is we're going to be doing a deep dive into advocacy issues, because there are three levels of probably stumbling blocks that people can encounter when operating in the local content space. So, one is complying with the legislation itself. That's from a company perspective. The second is dealing with the local content secretariat. And the third is how the industry is handling the local content legislation. So, it's a statement of advocacy. And so we want to be sure that we voice those issues, those challenges clearly, and that there's an answer that can be expected that gives direction and allows businesses to navigate around whatever challenges that they are having in the space. And also, from the industry's perspective, we want to be able to give our participants preview into opportunities that are coming beyond the ones that are published now. So in the oil and gas sector, they do a lot of opportunity exposure through requests for proposals. So firms only know of opportunities when they're published. That doesn't give them a lot of time to scale, because if you're only knowing about an opportunity on the day that is asked, it doesn't really allow you to plan strategically. So we want to ensure that firms in Guyana are not caught unaware, and therefore compete. So we want to make sure that this is something that they benefit from, the things that they don't know already, so that they can adequately plan, scale, and be on top of the opportunities.
And how are you going to pursue that within the context of the summit, in terms of transferring that kind of knowledge and know-how to potential businesses and investors?
So we've got the industry leaders themselves. We've got the top 5 oil and gas companies that have the most activity when it comes to publishing local content projects, or projects that will require local content participation. And so basically, as a Caribbean terminology go, we will get it from the horse's mouth.
Right. Now, you seem to be the one, Anita, who is all versed on the legislation. And tell me, how has the local content legislation impacted both the local and foreign businesses so far, as far as you can tell, as you look at the situation?
Well, I'll start with the foreign investors. I would say 10 years ago, foreign direct investment probably was just far apart. It had to be really big. It wasn't as it is now. Now, every corner of the globe, we are attracting investors. I don't believe there is a continent that doesn't want to work with Guyana or doesn't see an opportunity to settle some type of venture in Guyana. So I would say on that end, it has opened up the door for foreign collaboration. And the way that we've been able to do that is because we know we don't have the capacity in all the areas to meet the needs of the industry. And so the local content legislation affords us the opportunity to have more foreign investors present in the space, and those investors transferring their skill sets, their know-how, their technological advancements that will better build the capacity of local businesses as we go forward to navigate from the oil, gas, and soon to be energy sector. So that's on the one hand. On the local front, it's dual fold because local content not only affords local companies to participate in the oil and gas sector, but it also gives the non oil sector an opportunity to boom. Because let's face it, the oil and gas sector does not operate in a vacuum. It needs the services sector, the construction sector, hospitality, accommodation. So, just the sheer magnitude of growth in businesses in those sectors, not just oil and gas, is a testimony to how effective the impact of the legislation has been. And not only that, people are owning businesses at a much earlier age. I mean, before time, when you hear people are business owners, they got to be like well into their 60s. Grandma and grandpa or mom and dad had to have left a company to them. You can't just come up off the road and have an idea, turn that idea into a vision and turn that vision into reality and negotiate contracts on your own or negotiate a strategic alliance with a foreign firm on your own. So I think the rate of accelerated growth in terms of homegrown entrepreneurs and businessmen has been unprecedented growth levels, to put it in a nutshell.
And as more and more businesses take advantage of the opportunities that are available with oil and gas booming in Guyana and the local content legislation, which seeks to create opportunities for everyone who wants to get involved, your summit seeks to sort of guide and create the roadmaps for getting around all of this. What would you say is one of the main challenges? Because you've talked about a few of them as we've progressed in this interview, but what would be the main challenges that businesses face in compliance issues, compliance with the content regulations, and any specific parts of the summit that will seek to address that?
Abby, you want to take this?
Sure. For us, the compliance issue has been a long-standing, not just within the local content aspect of it, but just compliance in general to businesses in Guyana, getting the relevant documentations that are needed for business to function, for a business to be able to be seen as a legitimate company, and for a business to be able to be awarded contracts on those basis. So the challenge has been that. The challenge has been to bring smaller business up so that they can have the relevant documentations and be compliant. And so that when the RFIs, the RFQs and RFPs are out, they can then be available to participate within the sector. And I think this conference speaks to that. It speaks to helping businesses to understand what it is that they need in terms of compliance documentation so that they can then participate within the oil and gas sector. This year, again, we're fortunate enough to have sponsors like ExxonMobil and Bono Energy who are going to have women-owned businesses, especially SMEs and medium-sized businesses, to participate within the sector, within the summit, so that they can have the relevant knowledge that they need.
And are you also working with the local content secretariat in Guyana as well? They're also part of the summit?
The local
Yes,
content
it's a
secretariat
collaboration.
yes, and the Ministry of Natural Resources have been on board since the first year, and it is a collaboration between us and that ministry.
So if I can sum it up, this summit is the best of all worlds that local content pushes, right? It's a joint venture between two companies, and it's a collaboration, a public-private partnership, if you will, right? And I think that's just the essence of local content, to build capacity through these types of collaboration. And so from the very first year, because the legislation is government owned, it's government led, we're not the owners of the legislation. We're just here trying to bridge that gap between policymakers, operators, investors, citizens. It's a quadrant that we have to balance to make sure that there is something for everyone. But our strategic partners are the local content secretariat and the Ministry of Natural Resources.
And wherever there's legislation, there must be some sort of policy that comes with it to sort of make everything, all the moving parts work. In terms of policy that is being driven by the local content secretariat, can you say whether or not they're on the right track? Do you feel like there are aspects of it that need to be improved, that you may be addressing at the summit, talking about at the summit, in terms of policy that is driving the local content legislation and local content participation?
Oh, definitely, definitely. There are so many moving parts that will always leave the legislation room for improvement, right? And the thing is, only until you get into it, you will know what needs to be improved. So I think, that space for continuous improvement. Now, the way that the Secretariat knows how to improve is not just feedback from summits such as this, but when they receive the local content plans that are prepared by the licensees and the contractors and subcontractors, it gives them guidance as to what will be the demands of the sector. So they have clear direction, and they will be speaking towards some of these initiatives and policy directives that they either are in process of negotiating or will be pursuing in the remaining months of the year. There's a particular one that will be spoken about exclusively by them on the summit day, which is a challenge that was highlighted through this very same type of collaboration, right? And so I know that they're on top of it, and I know that they hear the feedback. And for sure, at this summit, they are going to be speaking to address some of the concerns that have been raised. And also in the planning of this summit, I have to say, a lot of the stakeholders who wanted to come on board openly voiced challenges that they were having. And they asked us if we can create an environment or make the space open to them having answers to these questions. And we have worked with the Secretariat to ensure that they have the answers ahead of time, so that no one leaves feeling like they just attended a summit and it was just a lot of empty promises and it sounded good, but what do we do with this information?
And what are a few of the challenges, or all of the challenges, if time permits, that have been articulated to you? The participants who are seeking to come on board in the summit, who have had challenges that they would like to get answers to. What are some of those concerns and problems and challenges?
I see you wanting me to give away the whole panel. I'll stick to two. I will stick to two so as not to give away what will happen on that day. But one of the major issues you will hear from companies is access to finance. And one of the challenges that they face is having the oil and gas companies pay on time. I think traditionally, it's not just here, but around the world, oil and gas companies are not traditional companies. They're not going to pay you 30 days or under. So it stretches you out, which forces companies to have alternative contingencies in place. And I feel like to navigate around this is very difficult for businesses because there are not a lot of solutions that are geared towards that. But recently, a local bank came up with a solution that they are testing with one of the oil and gas companies. And I'm quite sure that will be successful. So that may bridge the gap of this advocacy issue for access to finance. So it's finance when you're in the sector, and then finance to get into the sector, right? So that's twofold. And then the second one would be, how do they make themselves competitive for opportunities? And this is twofold again. Abby touched on it when she spoke about businesses being ready to offer consistent quality. And the oil and gas companies will be the first to tell you, if you land the job, that's wonderful. To keep the job, there's a whole other story. So that ability for firms to not only establish capacity, but maintain competence is a key challenge. And the way to do that is to have the oil and gas companies clearly explain the process to them so that they are able to better prepare. Because all of it is new to us. We never had oil and gas before. So all of us are just trying to feel our way around it. And the more information that we have, the better decisions we can make. So we can have a gray area when it comes to how firms can be competitive, how firms can truly build capacity, how they can consistently negotiate contracts. and keep the capacity in house. Because the last thing we want to hear is say, oh, well, we tried with the Guyanese firm, but they didn't cut it. We have no choice but to bring in a foreign firm. I think that would be the undoing of the intent that the government had through local content legislation. So I would say those are two of the pertinent issues that we will be addressing among many others.
Huh. And Abigail, how can small and medium-sized businesses, and Anita was just talking about the access to financing, and the smaller you are, the more pressed you are to get paid on time and early because your cash flow is so constrained. How can small and medium-sized businesses effectively position themselves, though, to benefit from a emerging local content opportunity? And how will
MBW,
the summit seek to present that and paint that picture for them?
MBW is a testament of that same question right there. We have been in business for 5 years now, and we have been able to successfully penetrate the oil and gas sector and to grow. What we have done is to collaborate. It is highly impossible to do this alone as a small business in Guyana, and we have seeked out partnerships from individuals and companies who are very versed in this field. We've seeked out partnerships with companies who are financially capable of carrying the heavy load. Anita alluded to being able to find and access finance to carry you through. The 30 days and the 45 days don't always happen, and so you need that financing and you need that support. And that is what we have been able to do at MBW successfully. And I believe that model can be transferred to other companies. And with the Women in Energy, which I'm a part of as the chairwoman, we have been speaking to that, to our membership who are small women in business. We have been explaining to them that collaboration and partnership is the key and the goal to succeed within the industry. And again, the summit is going to speak to that specifically.
Okay. Outside of oil and gas, though, what other opportunities and businesses are seeing any kind of growth, or significant or minor, or on the upward trend in terms of growth in Guyana right now, and due to the local content legislation and policies that have been put in place?
Every other sector. We did a feature last year where we brought in success stories from non-oil companies, right? Non-oil businesses. But the summit is so packed this year, we may just have to mention a few of them.
Like,
And I'm going to tell you, from the hairdressers, spas, the person that's working a taxi, the person that wants to open a laundromat, somebody that wants to open a little cafe. In the last 2 months, I swear, like there's been 8 cafes that have opened in Guyana. And before, if you had 3 cafes, it was a lot. 8 cafes. And I mean high-end stuff, not just some bottom house thing. Like amazing ambiance. The menu is like world class, right? Agro processing. Because guess what? Every time an FPSO comes here, you know what they need? Food. So the smaller farmers, the government has so many initiatives to push farming that your little backyard garden in your house can be a scalable business if you just know how to do it. And they give you the tools to do it. So agro processing, regular farming, that's on the up and up. Construction is a must. That's a must. I think there are over 1,000 new contractors in the space of the construction industry. And that's simply because of the magnitude of opportunities that's available. We're talking rehabilitation works and new works. So it's buildings, it's roads, it's bridges, it's highways, it's everything, right? Then you have the hotel industry, right? The hotel and accommodation and tourism industry. And now what this does is it opens opportunities for trainers, for professionals who work within the service industry. There have been a flurry of restaurants and catering companies that have opened. And recently, there's been a successful launch of a catering consortium in Guyana. So there's a local catering consortium on the one hand, who have formed themselves to get into a joint venture with a large foreign catering firm to provide exclusive services for the FPSOs. Aside from that, you have people just like Abigail. They started with one small fleet of cars, and now they're tendering for big transportation contracts, right? There's room for schools, there's healthcare facilities, there are, you know what's on the up and up here? Aesthetic spas. So the quality of life because we have an influx of expats, they expect the quality of life. So all you have to do is look around and see what can make people's lives better. What can save them time? What do they need? There's a plethora of opportunities, and there are initiatives all around to promote businesses, whether it be from micro, small, medium, or as large as you want it to be. There are opportunities in the space for it.
And as I normally say, there's
agree with
never a
that,
better
Abigail?
time. Yeah, as I normally say, there's never a better time to do business than it is right now here in Guyana. We are a cesspool of opportunities for small, medium, and large-sized companies.
All right. Now, at your summit, at the summit on April 8th, the local content summit, you're going to have speakers from the big ones, major industry players like ExxonMobil, SBM Offshore, and Halliburton. What are some of the key insights you expect to hear from those big players to be imparted to your participants?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we want them to scope out the opportunities, frame it. I mean, put it in simple terms, spoon feed the audience, if you will. We don't want any hidden narratives that leave people figuring out things when they have no more information than when they walked in. We want to ask the hard hitting questions. Beyond what is publicly known, what should we be planning for? We need them to get into how the sector will expand beyond 2025, like a 3-year plan, so that people have the opportunity to be ready. They have the opportunity to get ready, right? So we expect them to speak to that. We also expect them to speak to initiatives that they have introduced to be compliant with the local content legislation. And there have been 3 additions to the legislation in the last year that weren't there before. The first one is they have to have a concrete plan to include small and medium-sized entities into their value chain. That was never there before. And if you were a small or medium-sized entity, probably you would be in a non-oil sector. But now in the local content plans, licensees and contractors have to demonstrate their action plan to ensure that these businesses are not marginalized. So we expect them to hear. We expect to hear from them their initiatives that is driving that. The other excluded sector was women-owned businesses, right? And it's not that they weren't included, but there wasn't a push to have women-owned businesses involved in the oil and gas space. And now that is a legislative requirement that you must have in place a plan to ensure that women are included. And then the third thing is CSR.
Anna.
Yes. Oh, and let me pause here to say, when you go to most conferences, I don't know what to put this guy. It's a sausage fest. It's the men up there. And maybe you have one woman on the panel, for the sake of diversity. I am proud to say we are very gender balanced on this summit. Perhaps it's the only event where you will see so many women. In fact, one of our panelists is not only a female executive, she's expecting a baby and she will be on the panel. So women are everywhere, right? So they will be given that space. And the third thing that we expect them to speak to is their corporate social responsibility initiatives. It's the view that companies like Exxon, they just come to Guyana, they make their money and they leave. They don't really care about the country. But the government has taken that very seriously, and they've included as a legislative requirement, there must be in every plan. What is your action plan to ensure that there are community building activities? So it's not just in Georgetown, it's in the remote areas. So every region in Guyana is feeling the effect of the investment of these industry giants. And of course, we expect them to be really honest with the things that are keeping businesses from being more actively participating in contracts and how they can better prepare themselves. What are the industry expectations of a provider to oil and gas companies? How can they maintain their presence? How can they grow their presence? Let them be real with what is really bugging them about us so we can fix it. If you're in a relationship and your spouse tells you, oh, it's fine, and then one day they come like, I'm just unhappy with you because I can't stand your attitude, you're going to be like, what attitude? You never told me. So we need them to be real. Tell us things that you don't like so we can fix it. We can go get therapy. We can
Give you a heads up.
Give us a heads up, man. Set us up for success. I think the whole purpose of that panel, set us up for success so we can succeed.
Set us up for success. I like that.
Right? So if we fail, let that be on us. But it can't be you didn't set us up to fail and we're all in shock that we failed. Right? So that's the whole point of that panel.
No, while the local content legislation makes provisions to have women-owned businesses get their fair share of the pie, and I just absolutely love that. Organizations such as the Women's Chamber of Commerce, and I know, Abigail, you're heading the Women in Energy or Women in Energy organization as well. How does the Women's Chamber of Commerce, for instance, contribute to ensuring more inclusive local content participation? What specifically are you doing to drive that, even though the legislation makes provisions for it?
Right.
As a woman who is leading a woman organization, we have been closely partnering with the local content secretariat over the number of years to ensure that we understand, as Anita was alluding to, the requirements of being into this sector, the requirements of success in the sector. We've also been speaking to our members about what are their challenges, how can they be supported. We have been advocating for them. We have been taking back this message to the local content secretariat, who in turn has brought all of the concerns and the challenges to the companies, the oil and gas companies. And I think today that has supported the inclusion of the participation, the required participation of SMEs and of women-owned business within the oil and gas sector. So that advocacy work has been in the play for a number of years, through whether it's surveys that we are doing, whether it's the forum that we're doing to bring together women within the sector who are working in the sector and women who are also business owners, gathering all this information, sitting down with the local content secretariat and presenting this information to them, who in turn have gone back to the oil and gas companies and said, hey, these are the challenges. Let us include women. Let us give them a fair chance and a fair play at the sector.
All right. Ladies, that's all the time we have. I want to thank you so much for joining me on The Narrative to speak about your local content summit, which is into its third year this year, April 8th, in Guyana. Abigail Lonke-Watson, Chief Executive Officer of MBW Inc., and Anita Ramprasad, Chief Executive Officer of Prestige Management Consultants, the co-founders of the Local Content Summit. Good luck with the summit, and you're welcome back to The Narrative anytime to talk about what you're doing. Absolutely love it. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. This is The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Farrier. More when we come back.